Okay, and here we are. So welcome everyone. We are going live and thank you so much for finding a time to be with us. Very excited for UK guys. This is an evening for America. Hello and have a nice morning. And I have a little bit of echo going on here. So never mind, I will try to improvise. You okay, Justin?
Yeah, it sounds great on my end.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, never mind. I will improvise here. Anyway, welcome everyone. And what we are here for today, we are going to be talking with Justin Messina, who is personalized performance coach and strategist, joining us from US. Where exactly are you based in, Justin?
I'm in Florida.
You're in Florida, great. So anyway, today we will be, sorry guys, I've got this echo going on, so I hear myself like 5 times. It's very awkward. Michael, is there anything we can do about this right now, just before we start?
About what?
I'm having an echo in my ear.
Echo in your ear?
Yeah.
Oh.
My sound I can hear a few times back. Well, yeah.
Wait, I'm gonna check.
Thank you very much. And while Michael is checking, Michael is our tech support. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce our subject. I have to take these headphones off while I'm speaking, and then I put it back on. Justin, is that okay? We will rock and roll this way so I can actually focus. Today, we are going to be talking about unleashing the spectacular within you. It's a huge subject. Jay and I, we've been talking about this a little bit before this streaming, and there is so much juice we are going to talk about today. So stay with us. There is lots we are going to reveal. Also, we want to make it interactive. So please feel free to interact, send us messages, questions. I will switch in a moment onto my Facebook page where I can see all your questions and comments. And again, thank you very much for coming. Welcome. And now I'm going to give a voice to our guest that I so appreciate is joining us today because he's got a really busy schedule. So welcome again, Justin, and tell us a little bit more about you.
Thank you, Lucia. So yeah, I'm Justin Messina, personalized performance coach and strategist out of the United States. People in my audience are waking up after Christmas, the early afternoon now, in the East Coast of the United States. And yeah, like I've been a coach, I guess, since I started around 2013, and just was always looking for myself to look for, like, you know, what helps people get really successful? What helps people? How do people change? How do people go into like a community and change it? How do people, you know, change their beliefs, and no matter where they come from or whatever. So over the years, I started to realize that a lot of my clients ended up being women, and I started a program around helping women in their love lives, out of, not because it's, as a little boy, that's what I thought I would do, right? But out of just being around a lot of friends and being in a lot of personal development culture. And I would just notice I would be working, just having conversations with friends or sort of exchanging services, things like that. And people would go out in their lives and they would just start like having breakthroughs in their relationships. And so I decided I couldn't ignore it at a certain point. So I started to, work through that. And over time, a lot of the clients I have come to me for that. But what I've noticed is a lot of the foundational pieces, which we're going to talk about here today, are things that really work in many different areas of life. So you could start with one result, like, you want this result, this is what I'm focused on. And you could end up getting a lot of other different results if you're doing it right, if you're doing it very efficiently, because you're the common denominator that goes with you wherever you go. So as you're developing yourself, you could do it in a way where you're not managing 12 different buckets of things that you want to accomplish in your life, like the different areas of your life, but you can actually focus on some key things and it can actually expand everywhere. So that's a little bit about my philosophy. A lot like it's almost, I'm in like the 90% plus or whatever women coming to me that actually get into relationships. But I always tell them, like, you getting into a relationship or not, or who you date, that's all your decision. Just like what career you choose or whatever your goal is, it's your decision. It's just about getting you some deeper self-awareness, deeper language around your gifts, your strengths, talents, personality advantages, all these kinds of things that are the foundation that we build. So I'm sure we'll get into more of it, but that's a little bit about, how I approach coaching and what I've done for people.
Thank you, Jay. So it's great introduction, and it gives us a little bit of flavor what you're doing. This is actually so challenging because whatever you are saying is coming back to me twice as well. So I'm sitting here at the edge of my seat, like really listening and focusing on your lips, what you are saying, which is perfect because that actually encourages me to be very, very focused on and be with you, like fully. So it's perfect. Yes, I mean, a lot of my women who will be watching this streaming are on their journey towards the motherhood. Does whatever you do with your women also apply? I mean, you're talking about goals, you are talking about focusing on important things, and like, can it apply in these kind of situations as well? And can you give us a little bit of examples of so we can relate to it a little bit closer?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't, some of my clients, do share their names and pictures and things in terms of testimonials. Many of them don't want to, it's a very private kind of area a lot of times, love life. But I will say that I'll just change one of my clients' names because I don't have her permission. I have her permission to share her information, but I'm going to talk very specific details. So I'll change her name for this, So I'm going to call her Sarah. Okay. So Sarah is somebody who I worked with for 9 months, and the initial package is usually 6 months, usually how I work with people. So she came to me through being irresistible. She wanted to master her love life and, her relationships. And so one of the things that she was dealing with is, and you don't always know what you're dealing with. You get some idea of different things that, you look at, and you might think like, well, I tend to, well, I'll stay specific. For her, it was like she would be dating different guys, and she wouldn't know, like, okay, this guy has, XYZ that's good, but then he has this other thing that is not as attractive. And then this other guy, he's like really attractive, really everything I would want. But in terms of a partner, it was like, maybe we're not really that compatible. So it's like almost like picking and choosing what would be what, but it's hard to know what's what until you kind of know what tools to use to look at it, from a new perspective. So for her, it was about, we looked into her beliefs and thought patterns, and we did a whole, we got a bunch of data. I like to work with a lot of data, right? As much as I know about the person on a one-on-one, it's the best. So for her, it was like there was self-worth things in the background, and there were certain patterns of how that played out. Because it's one thing to know, oh, okay, I have beliefs where I don't, value myself, but how does that play out in your life, right? So she started to identify, together we had identify, where does this show up? Does this show up when you're first meeting somebody? Does this show up in like a big environment, like at work, or, all the different things we looked at. And one of the things that happens is once you can see your patterns, you can interrupt them all over the place. So you not only know how your beliefs are being kind of played out in your life, like a program, but you can interrupt it, and you could say, okay, sometimes it's a very clear cycle. It's like there's a trigger, and then there's an action, and then there's a pattern you just keep falling into, and you just don't know it. So for her, that's where we focused. And then we focused on, obviously it helps to learn if you're trying to date the opposite sex, it helps to really learn about how they operate, which very few people do, which is one of the funniest things I learned along the way is that, men and women both, we do very little to really learn each other. So that was another part of it. She decided to get into a relationship with one of the guys she was dating. She's still in that relationship now. That's awesome. But again, it's not an ultimate benchmark because it's everyone's choice who you want to be with and how you want to, go about your love life. But it's awesome. She just spent Christmas with the same guy and she's building her life out. And now how does that work in other areas of life, right? That's great that it happened in her love life. But what's happening is because she's developing herself and understanding how she operates, she understands like her pitfalls that she's most likely to fall into, right? And we made a personal brand for her, which is what I do for a lot of people one-on-one. And what that is it's like your advantages, your gifts, how do people see you at your best? And, which parts of your life are you maybe not living out loud? There might be something inside of you that's really amazing, but you're not through the circumstances of your life or, what you're currently doing in your life, you might not be really expressing yourself in that way. So we look at all those things. And when she started to feel really great about where she was in her love life, she's like, well, how she looked at her relationships was like at a higher standard. She's like, okay, I can own what I want in my relationships. So naturally she started to look around her life. So then she looked at her work environment. She's like, I have really toxic relationships. I act in ways that I would never act around people I care about, because I'm in this environment that I feel like I'm sort of, stuck in and like I have to behave because it's my job. What can I don't want to get fired, all that kind of stuff. So then we just pivoted and we said, okay, let's look at their career. So we used things that we can look at and, key actions to take for her career, but it's coming from the same development, it's coming from the same base, which makes it a lot less like you're managing, like I mentioned earlier, like the 12 different buckets, like that can be really
Jay,
like
I'll just interrupt you for a little second and then I'll let you speak just because I need to plug in my computer. I don't know why the battery went really down suddenly. So I'll let you talk. I still hear you here. Give me 30 seconds, but please continue. Okay. I just want to make sure it doesn't switch us off.
Yes. So in the pivot to career, one of the things that was great is like, she was like, well, I like my industry that I'm in. And I just want to, find a job that's like a good, like we identified like the work culture, right? Good people. You want to be around good people. You want to be around an environment that you like going to work. You enjoy it, right? So within a couple of months, because we already did a lot of the big work that was the foundation of it all, she got a new job and she got a remote job. She got a job where she could manage her hours. So obviously she's working from home. So she's managing her social environment, right? So she's not forced to be around people that are bringing her down and all that. And she makes more money, more time, same industry. So transferable skills, but it wasn't from like, hey, what are my skills? What should I do for a job? It was just like a creation, and that's a very big difference.
So it wasn't that linear thinking. It wasn't like what we normally do, because as a humans, what we normally do is A plus, B leads to C and D, or 1 + 1 is 2. It wasn't what I call linear thinking. It was that things been happening in very different order, and what it sounds like, it was like the results that she got, what I'm hearing, was almost like unexpected because it was not happening in this linear order. So can you describe what is the difference between usual approach and this new approach that you are teaching or coaching people to be guided by?
Yeah. So the difference is just like there's a lot of like grinding it out that happens when you're doing the linear approach. And just to finish what happened with her, like she got employee of the month. And then, it was kind of coming to the end of the time that we worked together. And she was like, Justin, I feel good about my love life, feel good about my career. Like, but now I have too much time and I want to find a hobby. Like, what should I do? So that was her problem. First class problems, I call that. So with her, and with, in general, to your question, it's really creating like a place of allowing things to come to you and not feeling like you're forcing it all the time. You could really feel like we feel a lot of times like we're grinding, and there's a systemic, it's part of the system that we're in a way, in the world, and how we've been taught things, which is a lot of times overlooked. People know to look at their beliefs and their thoughts and how that affects, what they're doing and how they're approaching things. But I think there's just a deeper thing, where we just think we know, okay, if we want to get a result, let's brainstorm a bunch of actions, and let's go do them. And I say brainstorm, we might not think of it like brainstorm, but it's generally what you would do in any sort of coaching environment or any sort of like, you're creating your goals for the year, right? You're usually going to think, okay, here's my result I want. What do I need to do to get there? And you're just going to come up with stuff from your own head, and then you're going to do those things. So it's a very simple process, but a lot of times that's just going to lead you to like the things that you already would have done before. So they might work, but it might be very slow, right? So when you take this approach of, I'm going to look at the key things kind of in my way, in my constitution, in my being, and you can identify not just what's in your way, but what are the big things in my way to where I really want to go. And if you can have a technology to identify that thing, like the boulder, we call it like the glacier. A lot of people like kind of scrape the sides of the glacier off because it's like, I transformed, I got a breakthrough. And it's like that. But we're looking to identify like, what's the bullseye thing, and just destroy that glacier. So there's that big thing that's in your way, like in an internal sense, is just not in your way anymore. It's just like, blown to pieces. And so that you can like have a clear path to where you're going. And that's what's different about it, is that that's not going to be specific to any one area of life, because if you focus in on one area of life and you really get to where you want to go in that area, what you've essentially done is you've just completely transformed something about you. So how you show up in every other area can't be the same as it was before.
That's fantastic. Like, this is so great that I'm hearing this, because it's just reconfirming whatever I've also been teaching for years with my women. And what I love when happens in terms of transformation of women, because I think we are talking very similar language, just maybe putting it in different words. What I believe is natural female energy is almost this magical magnetic energy. So, and that's what I'm guiding my women from, like from the space of, survival and striving, you call it grinding, right? I have a visual of this little bug pushing this big ball up the hill, like doing 120% of his effort. And he's, that little bug is always stressed that this thing is going to fall down any time when he has less than 120%. And it's hard life doing it this way, And what I see for women, and what happened and transformed also in my life, is that, I've found a way how to go back to my feminine, how to use this magnetic energy, like you said, and transform fundamentally something that was in my way, that was hidden from my view. Once that happens, I absolutely agree with you, Justin. What happens is when you allow yourself to, and it takes courage, right, to go that deep, it has a huge knock-on effect on all areas of your life. Even like things that you never thought would be related to this thing, they are, literally everything. So that's really, would you like, it's really a shortcut to what you really want in life, right?
Yeah. As long as shortcut is a word that I think it is a shortcut. And just to be clear, so people, it can be misinterpreted sometimes that a shortcut in the way that we're talking about it right now is not about, getting away with not doing something that you need to do or anything like that. It's just getting outside of what kind of you're told that you should do and how things work, and realizing that a lot of that stuff and a lot of those, what you think of as best practices maybe are not really the answer to somebody who is out for excellence and out for something like amazing in your life, right? Because you can always get things done and get some results in anything, like especially in your career, you can see these little progressions happen just by working hard. But that's not like the world that I work in, and I don't think it's the world that people really want to be in, that would be listening, and following Lucia and that sort of thing. So there's a lot more. There's a lot more that we can talk about. You just let me know where you want to go with this, because there's the technology and gifts and assessments and things that I think are people know about assessments and gifts and things, but it's like I think it's mostly untapped. People don't really know how to use it effectively. And I've spent and that goes back for me 10 years now too, really dissecting these things and seeing how they really work and things. But so there's a lot of different places we can go right now with this conversation. Yes. But I want to say one more thing is that it's to cap that point is what we're doing is we're getting you tapped into play and having fun, right? And this it's really hard to do it by yourself. It's almost impossible to do it by yourself. And having a community that you can have this kind of conversation with is just it would be crazy to not do that, right? It's like conditions for success. You want to have the best conditions around you, and you want to make it as impossible to fail as you possibly can. So community is one of those things that if you can't have conversations that are entering this world of hey, so what are we missing here? Or how do people really get that success? Or I noticed that a lot of very successful people kind of do it in their own way. They don't ignore how things work, but they kind of do it in their own way. They don't follow, they don't just learn from other people, and just do exactly what they did in their way. It's there's little nuances. You just ask yourself questions. It doesn't matter if you know the answer right now, but just kind of those open-ended, ruminating questions where you just are open to it. And you need a community, I think, that you can play with that, because that's how you're going to get into, landing on the things that are really going to make the difference.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love what you're saying. I resonate and agree with you. And we've both been in personal development for quite many years, and some of that on a similar journeys as well, which is so exciting to for me to do this interview with you. I'm very, very happy, genuinely. So let me ask you a couple of more questions, if I may, and something that interests me and your view, because this is male-female energy, so it's even more exciting for me because I've been working with women for the past 10 years. And I love you guys, so this is really good. You also in your programs, you talk a lot about your gifts and how to utilize them in life, in your world, and you're talking about how to personalize your actions based on your gifts. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So I'll just say this, that with assessments, first of all, I'll let you know that my background before coaching, I actually went to engineering school, and I was in industrial and systems engineering, and I finished my master's degree. And what I learned there is a lot of critical thinking, how to think. Never really wanted to become an engineer. I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do at that time in my life. But what happened was I learned how to think. I learned how systems work, right? So with the assessments, what I ended up doing is I ended up reverse engineering a lot of assessments, right? And understanding how they work, how they're put together, when you get a certain result, like if you just take like a popular one, like there's like the big 5 personality assessment. It's like the most scientifically backed assessment or proven through different, studies. So when you look at like something people all have heard about, like extroversion versus introversion, there's a dimension there, but a lot of times people don't know what they're speaking to when they say that. And why does it matter to know if you're extroverted or introverted? Because a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll get an assessment result and they'll identify with it, which is the trap. Because if you identify with anything, you've already it's like you're putting yourself in a box, like saying, this is how I am. Like I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm, whatever it is. Anything you say, you join, it's like you can be trapped by that classification.
Yeah.
If it's the idea of identifying with something. So people can identify with extroversion, which I've seen a lot, and they say, oh yeah, I'm very outgoing, I'm very friendly, I'm a great person, kind of like proud of it, right? But that's really not like what's going to, that's not really what the assessment's there for. It's like a great tool to be able to look at and say, okay, what does this mean? So every assessment has its own little thing, but overall what I do is I work with lots of assessments, and I just, when I don't work with an assessment, it's basically because it's, if they're very, very similar, I won't use both of them, right? But I've created my own set of assessments to sort of, if you think about like the walls of a house, I want to cover all the walls of a house so we're not making a mistake with somebody, so we know for sure who you are at your core, like your common threads. Because one assessment and another assessment is going to have some overlap in terms of what you're getting out of it. And so what are the things that matter? Okay, so some of the things that really matter are things like, how are you set up versus the population around a certain personality trait? What are your innate advantages that you can use in life that people see in you if you're expressed fully in that way, right? Like for me, one of the things is like innovation. I do it a new way. I talk in a different way. I talk in terms of perspectives, okay? Now, that's easy. I can communicate that easily because I've done the work and I can see that. And that helps me in my career. That helps me with people, conversations, but also knowing assessments and how things work in different people. You're going to like be better at communicating with other people and understanding how they operate. It's the best way you can honor people. Yeah, that's a little bit about I don't know if I answered your question exactly, but I'll stop there. If you had a more specific question, I'll answer it.
I can talk to you forever, but I think, thank you very much. You did answer some of it, and of course I've got more questions. But what I want to ask you next, if I may, is you said something very interesting, and we touched on it before this interview, and it was possibility of escaping the old paradigm. So in other words, old ways of doing things in terms of inefficiency. So if we've been inefficient in the past, or we still are, how we can experience new paradigm of something else being possible in terms of what I understand is much more than just efficiency, because efficiency versus inefficiency, it will be just a fix, right? But right. How we can experience this whole new paradigm, how we can, in my feminine world, I would say, get things flowing, for those of you who are watching us, I'm sure you experience the day where you are in your natural flow, like ladies, like when you wake up in the morning and something feels right, and from the moment you make a coffee, you just like dancing in life, and then you have days when it's just not happening and you are pushing the thing up the hill. So basically, Justin, tell us please a little bit about how we can escape this old paradigm of hard life and inefficient, which is actually inefficient and frankly is also very tiring, right? And enter this new world of, flow and cooperation and dancing in life?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the initial steps are the same for most people. Like, because here's the main thing: depending on who you are, you have a certain set of responsibilities. Okay. Now, most people will tell you that they're very, very, very busy, right? But the main thing to know is if your life's not in flow much, if it just kind of, if you feel like there's a lot of responsibilities you have that are just sort of kind of like the client I described earlier, where it's like you go to work and it's toxic and you're just like, I'm just dealing with this because I need a paycheck and that kind of thing. Those are the kinds of things to start to like make a plan of like, okay, this is not good enough for me. This is not something I'm going to tolerate in my life. And it doesn't mean you quit your job that's, supporting your family today just because you heard this message. It means that you can create from a new space. Okay. It doesn't have to be based on your circumstances. Like, okay, well, I need a new job. What am I going to do? Because then you're still in that kind of space of like, I'm worried, I'm overwhelmed. Oh my God, like I need a new job kind of thing. If you could come from a new space, and the new space is sort of like, okay, there's freedom, there's play. What do I really want to do and what matters? And depending on who you are, you might not have a lot of time to do that, but you have to make time for things that matter and realize that there's more choices in your life than you think. Like I was actually just talking to someone recently about someone who has, she has many kids and she has many more kids that she takes care of in terms of they're doing like homeschooling. And, she's sort of like, I love my kids, but it's overwhelming what the time I need to put in. And she's not doing anything for her, like passion projects or like, where is she going to move into a new career and things like that that would just totally shift the fabric of life. Like it would totally shift the quality of her life. And it really just comes down to like, committing. What we got into a conversation about is like committing to something, even if it's a 1 minute a day. Okay. You have more than 1 minute a day. It's just the most basic example, right? But anybody can do something where you focus on what am I creating in this new life that I'm building. And it's going to, depending, every situation is different, but you can get there faster than you think. But what a lot of people aren't willing to do is they just don't create something from a fresh place. And it's very hard to do it just if you're in a silo by yourself and you're like, okay, I'm in this overwhelm and stress and I'm just going to create from a space of play. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's going to be very, very difficult to do by yourself. But, you can join a group or you can meet up with a friend or something and do this together, because it's something that I'm not going to give like specific examples out because that would be a whole nother conversation, right? That would take a long time to like really build that out. But I think like just being in the new space is like thinking about what really matters to you. I know that, Lucy, I don't know if I told you this before, but some of the same development that we've gone through in the past, I would go in that culture. I would talk to people and I would say, hey, like they would be in the midst of like, I'm mastering these different areas of my life. I'm becoming an amazing human being. I'm becoming a world leader. And I would ask them, hey, what matters most to you right now? While they were having a moment, and they needed to just kind of get out of it all. It's like, what matters to you? What do you care about the most right now? And they would just be like, what? It was like, they hadn't thought of that in it's almost like a year or something that it seemed like. So yeah. These are questions that are like, okay, I'm not giving you like $1 million answer here, but it's the things that you do, right? It's not the things you know. So if you know to ask yourself, hey, what matters most to me? And what can I do about it right now? Like you can ask yourself that now. You can start asking you that question. Again, it's like open-ended ruminating questions are like powerful questions. Your brain will go to work on them when you're sleeping, when you're doing other things, right? When you're in the shower and stuff like that, your brain will go to work on that kind of question. Like what matters most to me? What am I going to start doing? And there's other things that come into that picture, like core values and standards and different ways that you can set up if it helps you, honor what's important to you, I think, in your life. And again, doing that with other people and building out that conversation because, is so important because you'll never you'll never like just completely keep every promise that you make to yourself if nobody else knows about it, right? It's just you're not going to just transform into a new paradigm just because you said so in one day. Otherwise, if you can, you probably don't even need to hear that message. So
yeah, and this is a great message. Like, as a human beings, we are a little bit like machines, right? We on this, like we are habitual creatures, and we have a tendency to do things over and over again, same way as we have a tendency to think the same thoughts. Like, there is actually very few new thoughts in our brain. And so, I love every time I hear there is another person passionate about the kind of things that we do, whether it's coach or therapist, because I mean, or counselor, or someone who really loves their job and do it great, because there is so much need for us, for these people. And let's face it, we also know how powerful this work is. So I've got my personal coach or several coaches for different areas of my life, and it's beautiful, because the thing is, in the you said it's hard to do it alone. Yes, because in our own head, I don't know, I don't come up with anything powerful. It always happens in conversation, really, or it happens in my own head, but it's after the conversation. Does it make sense, guys? So it is so great what you are saying. Now, one more question, if I can ask. A lot of women who will be listening to us are women who are on their journey towards motherhood, and I know this is not your expertise, but can you see like maybe some tools or something that would be great to contribute to them? And what can you think of something that maybe can also apply to this, because this is a very specific thing, right? There are things in life that you can really influence and really go for, like finding a new job or having, I don't know, finding a partner in your life. Like, that's, I mean, to a certain degree, you can really, really influence it. To a certain degree, you can also influence becoming a mother, but there is a point where there are things that you can't influence. So is there anything you can say about that? Or sorry, I put you on a spot there.
No, it's not at all. No, I'm used to these kind of conversations. This is the kind of thing that that I, for years, like I had a private group of women. I mean, I still do. I just I've been more public with certain things lately, but I had a private group where these are kind of conversations that would come up. And sometimes it's great to have a male perspective, and then at other times it's great to have a female with you that can talk about certain things that maybe you wouldn't want to talk about with a male perspective. But obviously, like with what I got into, working with women all the time, like there's something about me that I'm more, I've just learned this over the years. Like, some of my strengths are like people feel they can confide in me, and they come to me with things. They come to me with, it's part of the coach in me, but it's also part of like just how you can feel like you can share your secrets with certain people and maybe not so much with others, right? So with women, it's just one of those things that for whatever reason, I mean, I know a little bit about it, but women feel more comfortable like being able to share with me than maybe the average guy out there. But I think with yes, I'd like to hear more about the specific challenges of what you're talking about. But what I'd say as a general sense is there's like self-worth is something that is very a broad area that kind of almost everybody deals with. So it's just about how that plays out. So what I do a lot of times is like I dive into the specifics of someone's situation to see how it's playing out. But just as a general like overview, it's kind of like there's self-worth that comes into dating and how you approach relationships. And there's a lot of things that happen between. Do you want me to speak to like the male and female dynamic? Because I want to guide your people in the right direction. I want to make sure I understand, like, if you have a specific challenge that you want to go into, like I understand, like you're saying motherhood, but is there anything like that you could pick out that I could kind of focus on? Because otherwise I'm giving a very like general kind of overview. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, specific challenge can be, let me hear myself just once. Sorry, this is really difficult, but I'm doing well, right? Specific challenge can be, you are the guy, okay? So I'm going to use this opportunity because we've got a man here, ladies. So I guess the specific challenge can be, if, let's say we are a couple, right? And I really want a baby. And you love me, you want to also baby, but there is a lot of stuff that is, playing on in your head. We don't have a house yet. I mean, there is not a lot of savings, and you as a male, you really want to provide for us, which is great, but you are saying, oh no, it's not the right time, and I'm like frustrated because I'm thinking, well, no, I mean, my clock is ticking. I'm going to be whatever 40 soon, so I need to have a baby now, and there is a clash. So I'm talking about relationships here. How can you, Justin, can you think of any tools how women can apply it in this kind of situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's okay that if we go very much into this topic, I mean, that's totally cool with me, just so you know. So with the biggest thing that comes to mind when you talking about that scenario, and it's great to have scenarios because it always comes back to a principle. It's never like a little quick, like, oh, what should I text him or what should I say? It's never that. It's always like a bigger picture of like, what is the effective way to look at this, right? So one of the biggest things, and this is men and women, I would like to say like a lot of the issues in relationships are similar for men and women. It's just they present differently, right? So in that situation, what happens is men and women, they don't learn how the other operates and what's really happening. So what's going to happen is you see a situation and you say, okay, he's saying, hey, it's not the right time for a child. Like, I want to have kids with you, but I just don't think it's the right time. There's all these other things to do. Now you hear that and you have a whole world of what that feels like to you, what it means to you. Now, in a male's mind, like even now, I'm hearing that and I'm hearing it a different way, right? So what's important is to understand, like, get educated on like how the opposite sex, because I speak to women a lot. I never want it to sound like I'm the guy telling women what to do. It's just that, each men and women both have important things that they can do to get themselves in, good situations, right? Where they're not dealing with a lot of these issues. But for women in that situation, to learn about how men are in terms of how they commit, how they become invested in somebody, right? And when it comes to having kids, there's a whole different world of what that looks like. So one of the key things I would say is that a lot of men don't have like it's how you get committed and how you get into a partnership is different for most men. And again, it's a generalization, men and women, there's exceptions, and we're human beings, we're so complicated and unique. And, but a lot of men will not look for, okay, I want to have a partner by a certain age, or there's no reason like having a child or getting pregnant. There's no real indicator of this is the time. So men will be, the results of all of this is like, they'll be more patient and they'll be more like getting things done. And the masculine energy is very much like directed and focused and want anything at a time. So if a guy's really focused in his career and he's doing that, there might be never a natural time that he says, yeah, okay, now is the time to have kids, like, right? So, and it's also, you don't know with that guy, it'd be nice to know, which this is a big problem too in relationships. There's a lot of times, sometimes you just don't know how to speak to the opposite sex to in a way that you're going to actually get like the core of what they feel about something like that. Just saying, hey, yeah, I want to have kids is like, you can get deeper with somebody. And a lot of times it's just being open with people. But the other thing I want to say, because this is something you can like do right now kind of thing, is you can learn how guys are go through their life, right? So the sort of the ages and sort of the natural experience of life is very different for men and women. So you have maybe Lucia, my partner in this example, right, is going out to have fun, you know, in your 19, 20, 21, 22, like those ages. You could start to go out to like a bar or something, and the attractive person that you are, you're getting all kinds of attention. You're in a lot of ways you're growing up faster. You look at the guy at that age, you know, he's figuring out himself. He's like, I don't know anything about women, like, but I'm supposed to know stuff about women because I look bad if I don't. So it's like a different world sometimes. And you're growing up, and as a woman, you're like conscious of when can I have children? When is it too late to have children? You know, am I attractive enough, or can I keep, you know, it's like your body as a woman changes in a different way than as a man. So a lot of times men get older. A lot of men feel like they're coming into their prime. And that's why you have like these dynamics where sometimes like older men dating younger women. It's like, if you're a 35-year-old man, why would I date a 35-year-old woman? Right. So there's these dynamics that people a lot of times push back against. But what really works is, let's understand each other and how things, you know, work in sort of a natural way, like, because people will make decisions based on the natural feeling. Like, you know, I would tell, you know, I've told clients before, it's like, you wouldn't have a reaction toward, or I would say, like, it doesn't help to have a reaction to a guy saying, like, if you see like a friend of yours that's like 35, 40 years old that wants to date someone who's significantly younger than him, if you say, hey, you know, you shouldn't be like that, that's very similar to your guy friend telling you, hey, you shouldn't want to have children. It's like, you know, it's like you're conflicting with your own. We are who we are as human beings, right? We're in these bodies, and, you know, it's how we are. So that's something that's hard for people, though, to look at the opposite sex and say, okay, that's a different species, pretty much, almost, you know, and there are just different ways that we experience life. So the more that you can be open, it's really just about having an open mind and an open heart, which is really like one of the key things in life that I'm experiencing. And it's a big part of a new program that we've got going on now, is like, if you can get yourself in those positions and practice that, your life opens up in huge ways. And I hope that gave something a little bit. It's a very complex arena when we start talking about like the men and women dynamics. But if you could just open yourself up to say, hey, I want to learn about the opposite sex, and I'm going to be a truth seeker, right? Because sometimes you find something out and you're like, well, if you feel like you want something to be true, you'll start to find evidence of it. And that's not truth seeking. It's like willing to find out whatever the truth is, even if it's like frightening. And believe me, if you haven't done this before and you look to find out stuff about guys, some things that you find out will be really frightening. You know, we're very different creatures. And that's something that I've also experienced working with women is a lot of times, even women that are very growth oriented and really want the best are shocked by some of the things around, you know, how men operate. And, but it's one of those things. It's like, if you want to be really great at that and you want to approach, you know, kind of like approaching your challenges head on, then I would say that's the biggest area, is to just really open yourself up to that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really great. And, you know, what I'm hearing also is that they're always men and women. I'm just writing this course also about, you know, for relationships and differences, like neuroscience backed up a lot of, you know, proven differences in female and male's brain. And I'm just writing the slides for it, and it's just so fascinating and so beautiful, because I mean, as a human beings, we all fundamentally want and need the same, right? We want to be accepted, we want to belong, we want to be loved and validated and all those things. But as a male and female, we just go about it different way. We communicate in a different way, and it's just so beautiful and so great when we stop making each other wrong about different ways we go about it, and we seek, like you said, the truth and understanding from that different point of view. So who knows, if we go back to our scenario, maybe we both want a baby in an equal way. It's just we both want it, and go about it in a different way, and so it's so important to understand each other's point of view, each other's worlds, and then be able to be aware of also how we operate inside of this structure, and then be able to express and communicate about it, which is so powerful, right, in any relationship. So Jason, we've got about 8 minutes. I know, and I need to ask you, because I know you are preparing some exciting stuff that you are going to put it out there in the world. And I know you are going to have a webinar, right? Just after this streaming. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your plans are and what is coming?
Sure, yeah. So with a new business partner of mine, her name is Kate Water, also in the United States. Just super powerful person with, she's a self-realization and integration coach, and it's very in the world of what we're talking about. We created the Conscious Creator Institute, and we've been having some webinars, and the webinar that's going to premiere, you're going to help me out with the UK time, but it's basically a half hour after this is scheduled to end, is when we're going to do a premiere on YouTube. And if it's all at consciouscreatorinstitute.com, but we're doing creating a Supersonic 2022. And then our program that we created is called Youniverse, Youniverse. And that program is all about conscious results, right? Creating from this new space and this new paradigm of just being efficient, doing things in play, doing things with fun, but having that community that we, that's kind of come up a lot in this live here, is that having a community of people that are going to be there with you, having that kind of energy of like, hey, we're creating something. We're not going to just grind it out or just tell you, hey, action, 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 action. Like a lot of people do. They become identified with like the grinding and I work harder than everyone, that kind of thing. So I've actually got the page up here, but it's a month-long program, Youniverse is, and there's live streams and Q&As and things with Kate and I. So you've access to Kate and I, and you have, you were working through like with her, some of the stuff she does is like body work, nervous system, your constitution, which, I'm kind of giving you the gifts and your advantages and what is that world. And then she's kind of coming in and sort of identifying, where you're at and what kind of is the main thing to focus on and the energy in the room kind of thing. So, we go through open heart, personality advantages, gifts. How do you awaken your mind outside of kind of what's been the way it's been for a long time? And a lot of the things we talk about today, that's our group program that we have out there. And again, it's all at consciouscreatorinstitute.com. And the webinar that's premiering in less like a half hour or so is the Supersonic 2022. So it's you creating the next year from a very conscious place, so that that you're in a solid place. You're asking questions that are going to open your mind up into this world, so that you're not just sort of, if you do a goal setting thing each year, or if you use the goal setting, a lot of it kind of gets recycled and you're like trying to do the same thing. And you might see, whenever, I always like to say, whenever you're in like a growth period where you're seeing like these incremental results, but you're not really going as fast as you want, that's a good indication that like, hey, jump into community, build from this new space, because it's going to really open you up. And I think a lot of the things we talked about here today are examples of what really is possible when you do that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So thank you so much for this. And obviously we are all invited. It will be starting in half hour after this streaming. So I won't keep you for much longer, but New Year is coming, right? So Jay, maybe the way how we can complete this conversation is maybe with a wish for people. How about that?
Okay. So what do you mean? What do you want to do?
Well, I was just wondering, like, if we have one wish that we can wish to people who are watching this streaming, like, what do we wish them? What would you like to wish all of
I mean,
them?
I wish people watching this, like, to see life in terms of, hey, life's been a certain way, and in the bigger sense of the world and things that are going on that kind of beyond what we talked about, is that there's more opportunity now to enter a place of inspiration and community, and to experience things that maybe don't seem possible, that, you know, weren't before. And I do want to share one last thing, that now that we are talking about this, is that there was a moment that when I was, around college, drinking heavily and things like that, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool to be self-expressed without alcohol, or like be fully myself, like how I am now, drunk, but just self-expressed without any need for that. And then years later, I'm driving my car and I forgot that I even had that thought. Years of, just going through things, breaking through things. I was like, oh my God, I've accomplished that. So a lot of times we're not even aware of like what's possible, because you could have that thought now that's like, hey, would be cool, but I don't know if it's possible. To like, hey, maybe not years down the road, maybe a month from now, there could be something like, wow, I can't believe that happened in a month. And I think that's the world we're living in now, and that's the world we're talking about.
Beautiful. I love that. It happened in my life and is magical. And, I do believe that the more people have access and experience this kind of world, the more better world we will be living in. Because maybe you will agree, I'm sure you will agree, that the more happy people, fulfilled people living their dreams, without it sounding cliche, it is totally possible. The
Absolutely.
more, peaceful and happier life for really all of us. So my wish for you, and I just realized I completely forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Lucia Hoxa and I'm a fertility coach, and I accompany and support women all over the world to fulfill on their dream to hold their babies in their hands. And so my wish for all of us is to really own our light, like who we are, and discover first and then own our light with pride, and shine that light brightly, like allow ourselves to shine. Because when we do, it inspires more people to do the same. And then we can also, these two little bright shining lights can find each other. Like, for example, we did with Justin, and we created this beautiful thing that you hopefully enjoyed. So I wish you guys to dare to dream. And my message is that miracles are totally possible for all of us. It might be the process of maybe letting go of some of the stuff that is no longer serving us. Then when we create the space for something new, miracles do happen. And I know what I'm talking about, because I was on my journey towards motherhood for 11 years, and now I have two beautiful little girls, twin girls. So, I'm no special. I mean, I am, but we all are. So my message is, let's dare to experience and allow the miracles to happen in our lives in 2022. Thank you so much for everybody joining us. Thank you, Jason, for our time together, and for your commitment to everything what you are doing and contributing to people. Good luck with your webinar that is starting in less than half hour now. Please send us a link or whatever
We'll put it below this, right? We can put it in the comments.
We can join. Please remember to do that. And guys, let's have a happy new year 2022.
Thanks for having me, Lucia. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.